Duncan Edwards wasn't a rising star. He was already a storm moving through English football like destiny with laces tied. He didn't wait to be great, he arrived that way, and every time he touched the ball, the future bent toward him. He was meant to lead England, meant to wear the armband, meant to lift what others only dreamed of. But before the crown could be placed, the sky broke. A plane went down, and with it, a king who never got to rule. No statue at Wembley, no chant in the rafters, no film that captured the fire. Just silence where a roar was supposed to live. Duncan Edwards wasn't on his way to greatness. He had already arrived. And then the world moved on like he'd never walked among us. Subscribe for the legends time erased, for the ones who didn't get a last match, because football may have buried Duncan Edwards in 1958. But after this, you'll carry him forward. Before the roar, there was Dudley, a town of smoke and stone where boots were worn thin and boys learned silence before glory. Duncan Edwards was born there. October 1st, 1936. No headlines, no golden path, just soot in the lungs and fire in the bones. His father worked with his hands. His mother kept the home still. They didn't raise a star, they raised a wall. By 10, he was already breaking records. By 12, he played for England schoolboys, shouldering boys off the pitch like they were paper. No tricks, no tantrums, just thunder in the shape of a child. At 14, they couldn't ignore him. At 15, Joe Armstrong knocked on the door. Manchester United's most trusted scout had seen a future and came to claim it. There were no youth academies, no long grooming. He was signed on sight, because greatness like his didn't need to be built. It had already arrived. He didn't smile for cameras, didn't look back at the town. He packed his boots and walked into Old Trafford like it had always been waiting. He wasn't sculpted. He was solid, not a prodigy, a force, not flashy, fierce. He didn't arrive to chase a dream, he arrived to claim a place. Because before Duncan Edwards ever wore the shirt he wore the weight like he was born for it. He didn't wait long. April 4th, 1953. At just 16 years and 185 days, Duncan Edwards made his debut for Manchester United. The youngest to wear the shirt in the First Division. No nerves, no jitters, just muscle and vision in the middle of the pitch. He played like he'd been there forever and like the game itself owed him space. He didn't shout instructions, he made them irrelevant. By the time he was 18, he was already playing for England. April 2nd, 1955 versus Scotland. Youngest post-war player to wear the badge. He didn't celebrate it, he didn't need to. Because when Duncan stepped on the pitch, there was no doubt who the strongest was. He wasn't a flair player, he was a field general. He didn't glide, he charged. He tackled like a freight train and passed like a conductor. And he could do it all. Defense, attack, midfield. Left half was his throne, but every blade of grass answered to him. The crowd didn't cheer his tricks. They held their breath when he moved. Because Duncan Edwards wasn't in the team. He was already becoming the standard. In a 1956 clash with Arsenal, he flattened their midfield, charging through tackles, launching attacks, dictating the pace like a general in boots. He didn't need time. He needed a team that could keep up. And in the Busby Babes, he found it. Bold, young, fearless. But even among the brilliance, Duncan stood taller. He was the core of the machine, the calm in the chaos, the muscle beneath the elegance. United won the First Division in 1955-56 and again in 1956-57. Back-to-back champions. And Duncan was everywhere, breaking up play, launching counters, scoring from distance like he'd built the net himself. He also lifted the FA Charity Shield in 1956 and 1957. Trophies followed him, not because he hunted them, but because they gravitated to his level. He played 151 games for Manchester United, scored 21 goals, all before the age of 22. And England? They were watching, waiting. He had 18 caps, 5 goals, and a future no one dared question. He wasn't just going to lead England, he was going to define it. Captain, anchor, icon. He wasn't chasing that title, he was walking toward it like it already belonged to him. February 5th, 1958. Manchester United drew 3-3 with Red Star Belgrade. They advanced in the European Cup. They were young, unstoppable, and destined for greatness. But the next day, everything ended. February 6, 1958, a plane waited on a snowy runway in Munich. On the third attempt to take off, it never left the ground. The crash tore through the fuselage and through the future of football. 23 people died. 8 Manchester United players, journalists, crew, coaches, and Duncan Edwards. He survived, but barely. Both legs shattered, ribs crushed, kidneys failing. They found him in the wreckage still breathing, but barely speaking. In England, the news hit like a siren. A nation didn't know whether to mourn or hope, because Duncan was alive, and Duncan never lost. He didn't die that day. For 15 days, Duncan Edwards fought. Inside a hospital in Munich, machines hummed, reporters waited, and a nation held its breath. Teammates visited in silence. Fans lit candles back home. Even those who'd never seen him play whispered prayers to a name they'd only just begun to know. Bobby Charlton sat at his bedside, unable to speak. Others came and went, heads bowed, eyes red, waiting for a miracle no one could say aloud. They said he asked, "Is the game still on Saturday?" A line that may never be proven, but no one doubts it came from him. Because that was Duncan, always ready, always carrying the weight. Doctors tried. The world watched. But on February 21st, 1958, Duncan Edwards died, aged 21. The newspapers went quiet. The crowd outside the hospital dispersed. And England lost more than a footballer. They lost their future. They lost the one they never thought they'd have to live without. He didn't go out in glory. There was no final game, no farewell, just a room in Germany. And the quiet collapse of what could have been everything. He played 151 games for Manchester United, scored 21 goals, lifted league titles, carried England at 18, and never reached 22. But that was enough, because Duncan Edwards didn't need 10 more years to prove his greatness. He had already done what most players never do with full careers. He defined an era before it even began. So Bobby Charlton called him the best player I ever played with. Tommy Docherty said he would have been the greatest of all time. No debate, no maybe. Just fact from men who saw it up close. They didn't speak in sentiment, they spoke in awe. Because Duncan wasn't a promise, he was a force. And though time took him early, it never touched what he left behind. He wasn't waiting to become a legend, he already was one. He just didn't get to see how long his shadow would stretch. He didn't leave behind trophies, he left behind silence. No farewell tour, no autobiography, no comeback story. Just a name that slipped out of the chance as the decades moved on. Others were remembered, others had footage, finals, flash. But Duncan? He was gone before the world could record him. There are no highlight reels, no viral compilations, just a few photos, a few memories, and a quiet statue in Dudley, unveiled in 1999. Most never see it, but those who do still feel something move. Because Duncan wasn't loud. He didn't scream for legacy, he let his football speak. And when that was taken, his story drifted. The modern game forgot him. But not everyone did. In Dudley, in the pubs, in the old stands of Old Trafford, his name still floats like dust that won't settle. He was too strong to vanish, too pure to fit the chaos that came after. They gave him a statue, not in Wembley, not in London, but in Dudley, where he was built. In 2002, they added him to the English Football Hall of Fame, long after he should have lifted the World Cup, long after the roar was gone. There's also the Duncan Edwards Trophy awarded in his hometown each year, a name passed forward, because he never got to wear the crown he was already earning. He didn't need 500 games, didn't need golden boots, didn't need the world's approval. He had presence, he had power. And for a brief, blazing moment, he had everything. The tragedy isn't that he died young, the tragedy is that we stopped saying his name. But maybe now we start again. Subscribe for the kings who never got to rule. For the fire, the world let fade. Because football may have buried Duncan Edwards in 1958, But today, you brought him back.